What's going on, everyone? The time has finally come. Greg Street, or better known by many of you as Ghostcrawler, announced the name of their new game studio, and it is Fantastic Pixel Castle. They are going to be working on an upcoming MMORPG, which is currently codenamed Ghost. If you go to the website here, you can see a bunch of information that they currently have up about their studio, about their team's values, their design philosophies, a little bit about the world of their game, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And you can see, the team that they currently have working on their projects. There's a lot of very familiar names here in the game space, a lot of former Riot devs on here. If you've been in the WoW scene for a very long time, you obviously know Greg and you definitely know Holinka, particularly if you were involved in PvP. But there's a lot of veteran and well-known names here working on this project. But it's exciting. We finally get to have some information about their game. They announced it on Twitter. And, they're really looking forward to trying to push this MMO out in a quick manner, but still an effective one. So let's talk a little bit about what they share on their website, their philosophies, and some of our feelings and thoughts on it as well. Fantastic Pixel Castle, FPC, is a new studio founded in 2023 to create our take on a modernized fantasy MMORPG codenamed Ghost. If you are interested in our studio, there is more context below. If you just care about Ghost itself, we get it, and you can jump here. It'll take you down. We're committed to being a fully remote and global studio so that we can hire world-class people and have them live their best lives. We think top-heavy bureaucracy stifles creativity, so we aim to stay small as we focus on delivering a game in a world that you will love. We are fully funded, and the team will share in all of our studio's success. So that's fantastic. It's not going to be a Kickstarter or anything like that. They're just getting to work on this game. The team's values: partner with players. Every iteration takes our game to new heights. Partnering with our players builds trust and helps us embrace a wealth of diverse perspectives. So about this a little bit, Greg also mentioned in their video where he announced it himself that part of this whole partnering with their players, they're looking to build this game alongside the players by listening to what the players have to say and their feedback frequently along the way. This is going to be a very interesting and tricky element, as the MMO space itself is so diverse now, and everybody wants something different out of their MMOs. And a lot of the times, people aren't even really sure what they actually want. We even see it happening with classic WoW, right? There were a lot of things where people wanted X things to happen in classic, and then when those things happened, it wasn't what they thought it was going to be, and then it turned out they didn't want it. And there's a riff even in the classic community in terms of decisions that are made about classic. And people are currently talking about classic plus and whether or not classic plus should be from 60 on, or if it should take place from wrath. And there's so many differing perspectives, just using WoW as an example in that regard. But if we look at the MMO space as a whole, it's even more diverse. Everybody has something different in terms of what they think is the best implementation or iteration of a system, or how a game should be, what the focus should be, how gearing should work, how involved PvP should be, should bodies be lootable, all that type of stuff. So it's a very interesting thing, and you have to be open to the feedback of your players, but you also have to have your own focus, because players are going to be very different and very jaded, as well as even unsure themselves in terms of what they want in the long run. A lot of stuff can sound good on paper to players, but then in actual implementation, it isn't what they thought it was. In this together, we foster a trusting work environment where it is easy to pick up when you think differently. We love games, have fun along the way. We love games, and we believe making them should be a joyful experience. We know sections like this can sound dry, perfunctory, or awkward, but we deeply believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. For us, that starts with actively sourcing global talent and using unbiased hiring practices, focusing on essential skills, passion, and experience. If you love building the best games for players and believe in collaboration and creativity, check out their careers page. So there you go. Now, looking at the game itself, let's talk a little bit about what they're offering for their game. So we've got our goals for Ghost. As players, we are deeply in love with MMOs for their promise of social worlds, but we also feel that the game genre has lately struggled to provide a community that you care about while still making your character feel heroic or special. We believe MMOs have moved too far toward solo adventuring where other players often just slow you down. We want to bring back as central pillars of the MMO experience both playing with friends and building a community. We want to bring back the chance to impact the world around you. This can be a tricky thing that can very quickly spiral out of control, depending on how, Zergy communities can impact these types of things. You see it very commonly with survival type games and really heavily PvP focused games where you just get really large, overwhelming Zerg based, mega faction, mega guild type clans that just look to have full influence over everything. So how they go about incorporating it will be important. We're currently in the early stages of development and don't have a planned release date for Ghost, which, by the way, itself is a placeholder name. We're so excited to share our first takes with you, but acknowledge that stuff will inevitably change as we test our ideas and get your feedback. So for those of you who only want to hear from us when our game is ready to try, we'll let you know when to tune back in. The world of Ghost. Imagine standing on the weathered cobblestones of an ancient city. In the sky above you are seemingly endless shards of broken worlds, a cornucopia of biomes that promise unlimited adventure and mystery. You are one of the survivors of an apocalypse lost to memory. The rebuilding of the world now lies on your shoulders. In Ghost, you travel to a world's shards to power up your characters, bring back resources, and build your fledgling civilization by growing and supporting the city's diverse and ever-changing factions. In turn, you'll see the city grow and evolve over time based on the choices and actions of players just like you, as an epic story unfolds season over season. The World of Ghosts is an original IP designed from the ground up to create rich and immersive gameplay. It is a fantasy world of heroic adventure where you seek clues to uncover the mysteries of the world and engage with allies and enemies who have diverse motivations, actions, and secrets. You will fight with axes and crossbows and magic, but we do want to avoid the tropes of fantasy that you've already seen hundreds of times. For example, there are no elves or orcs in Ghost. We are pouring our passion into our IP development early in order to build something that you can enjoy for decades to come. So, again, these types of things, like we're talking about, it's going to be interesting how they incorporate them, as these types of systems can very quickly spiral out of control when players have so much influence on the world per se. In our game, Conflict in the Shardlands, in our game, you will alternate between private realms that we're calling blue shards for you and your friends, and more public red shards that deliver a more traditional massive multiplayer experience. Blue shards play a bit like a survival game. You and your friends can gather resources, construct bases, and adventure out into the wilderness. Blue shards are extremely variable, ensuring a place full of new discoveries and challenges, guaranteeing that you'll never see the same blue shard twice. Because the blue shards belong to you, your effects on them are persistent and permanent. If you prefer a more competitive experience, you can host or join blue shards focused on guild rivalry or even guild versus guild PvP. Red shards are crafted by some of the best world artists and encounter designers to provide a signature massive multiplayer experience with many players at once. Red shards are some of the most challenging places in the game to survive, so your group will need to band together with other groups to defeat world bosses, collect critical resources, and even open the gates to the end game raiding instances. We expect some of you may prefer blue or red shards, but the core way to play Ghost is to travel between both regularly, as well as to Ghost's central city. So this does sound like it's going to be a bit of a hybrid between a MMORPG and a survival game, which is going to be an interesting balance in how those two things are going to function alongside one another. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to shape out overall. Fitting into your life. We know there are sweaty raiders out there who will be excited to invest hundreds of hours into Ghost. Awesome. You'll have plenty to do, including making new characters, discovering new blue shards with different and game-changing roles, and of course, raiding. We know others of you out there want to play lots of other amazing games in addition to Ghost. Our story unfolds in chapters, so when you finish a chapter, that's a great time to take a break and know you won't be left behind when the next chapter comes out. We also understand that many of you play with a group of friends that you take from game to game. MMOs are notorious for throwing up barriers to playing with friends, whether that's factions, servers, power levels, class mechanics, and so on. Ghost is designed so that the moment you first log in, you can be playing with friends, both new or old. It almost kind of sounds like they're going to avoid a level system in a way, or at least power levels in some format. So I guess it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, since it sounds like they want you to be able to just immediately be able to play with friends when they first log in. But, you know, there's no details on that right now. A multitude of classes. In keeping with the spirit of giving you lots of way to play, Ghost is extremely alt-friendly so that the time invested in one character benefits all your characters. This is really important, and I think Final Fantasy did this really well. Also, just being that like one character is able to progress all the classes, and, you know, a lot of the gear is shared across the different jobs. So, you know, that being a type of thing is very important, I'm sure, to a lot of people. This matters because there are dozens of character classes in Ghost. Our hope is that you can find a class that really speaks to you. There will be many ways to fill tanking, healing, and damage dealing roles, some of which will be iconic and some of which will be a little weird. While you will have several class options when Ghost launches, even more will be available as rewards within the game. Having a new class to try out is a great way to play with different groups of friends. Ghost Combat combines updated control schemes and UI with the classic targeting and combat strategy that we love from RPGs. While not every challenge will need to be overcome with violence, we get that great combat is critical to RPG longevity. We are investing a lot of effort in playtesting into this core gameplay feature. When, where, and how can I play? Our goal is to move as quickly as we can in development, and we have many advantages that will help us bring Ghost to you faster than the typical AAA game studio. We will also include you in early development and are committed to making even more major changes based on your feedback. We will bounce off ideas of interested players from time to time, and when we are ready for playtesters, we'll absolutely make sure to let you know. Our initial development efforts are focused on PC, and ideally, we will ship to console as well. We plan to ship our game globally and to localize into many languages. And while it is too soon to go into a lot of detail about our business model, and seriously, it is still evolving, don't worry about excessive gacha mechanics, endless loot boxes, pay to win, or the like. We want you to feel good about investing your time and money into this experience. We are unbelievably excited about the opportunity to make this game for you and with you. So those are the main things of their game at this time. And again, this is the team behind the studio as of right now. I'm sure they're still going to continue to expand, but they did say they want to stay a smaller studio, overall a smaller team. But interesting design that they're going with, you know, and the way this castle is right here kind of leads into, you know, the elements of how their world design is, with the world and the Shardlands. It looks like everything's going to take place on like a different floating world that you're able to travel to and take part in. So interesting for sure in that regard. The way the blue shards and red world connections are going to work will be an interesting thing to see in terms of how resources and characters are going to play out, how PvP centric some of this stuff is. You know, they talked about the red shards here, and they didn't mention anything about PvP in red shards. They only mentioned the PvP on the blue shards, where they, you know, people can make a blue shard that is focused on PvP or guild versus guild PvP. You know, red shards, for all we know, they could be more of a free-for-all type environment, but again, we're just gonna have to wait and see a little bit with that. The way they talk about, they're like, you know, the evolving world based on player decision sounds a little bit like how Ashes tried to promote the node system. We've seen some games try to do this before, and it's gonna be interesting. The biggest challenge here is players not just establishing a min-max meta right off the rip that everybody just builds their worlds the same way because it's the most effective way, right? Like that's just how gaming's become in general. And so that's why I mean when I say the player factor is one of the most difficult things to make a game around, because you might design your game, you might develop your game to be played a certain way or with the intention of the system to be utilized some way, but the player factor is uncontrollable and they will use that system how they want to use it if the game allows them to. So a lot of that stuff can be very easily warped and changed in terms of what happens with it. So looking forward to it though. We have another MMO on the market coming up now to add into the list. There's so many MMOs that are currently on the way. Looking forward to this one. Hopefully we see it, in a few years rather than, 2030 type of thing, right? Rather than 10 years. If we saw this in 3-4 years, that would be amazing. But we'll just have to wait and see with that. But thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, as always, be sure to drop a like. And if you have any questions or want to talk about more upcoming MMOs, catch us live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Zav. Take care. Have a good one.